Some women walk with grace, but a few like her dance with fire. She turned silence into movement and truth into a living poetry. She is the daughter of two legends, Dr. Vikram Sarabhai, the architect of India's space dream, and Mrinalini Sarabhai, the heartbeat of Indian classical dance. From galaxies to ghungroos, her legacy was written in both science and soul. A Bharatnatyam and a Kuchipudi dancer, a fearless theatre voice, a political force. She holds a doctorate in organizational behavior. She is an IIM Ahmedabad alumna with a legacy that commands states and streets alike. She's been honored with the Padma Bhushan, the Order of Academic Palms by the French government, and Gujarat's Gaurav Puraskar. She hasn't just created art, she moved a nation with it. On the first episode of TadPod, I sit across from a woman who danced through revolutions, fought with rhythm, and healed through art. Ma'am, welcome to TEDpod with Dhruvita Maida.
Thank you.
And it's an initiative by the Architects Diary. And really, ma'am, it's an honor to host you. You are the Mallika Sarabhai. It's really a pleasure, and I'm feeling so glad that I got this opportunity to host you on this wonderful platform. So before we start the questioning and to know beautiful things from you, I would want to share what this Architects Diary is about and what is its journey and all. So basically, it started, established in 2016. So the Architects Diary envisions transforming the Indian creative community through the digital forum. And it has up to 250 million plus digital footprint and over 1 million monthly readers, which is really a great number.
It's a phenomenon. Yes.
Yeah. So a TED Power empowers ethical journalism. So basic our motto is towards the candid and the real authentic journalism. And it nurtures the built environment and champions the future of New India. So once again, welcome Dr. Mallika Sarabhai, ma'am. So my first question for you is that, ma'am, you being born in such a legendary family, where both set of parents are from such successful backgrounds, and they are global icons, they are the change makers. And that way, how was your childhood shaped? And how has that cultured your persona, what it is today, ma'am?
I think it was a family of doers, not talkers.
Right.
And my older brother and I just grew up seeing everybody feeling a mission to build in India in their own ways, whether it was my aunt Mridula, who joined Gandhiji at the age of 14 and lived her entire life for political causes that she believed in, whether it was my aunt Lena, who was the first one to bring Madame Montessori and start what is Montessori education in India in a school called Shreyas, where I studied, whether it was my aunt Gira, who started the National Institute of Design and started the Calico Museum, both of which are now world famous.
Wow.
Have been. Or whether it was my own parents, Amma trying to do her own thing, but always wanting to use dance as a language for change, for empowering. Papa never wanting science for the sake of science, but always wanting it so that he could make the life of the last Indian, the weakest Indian, stronger, to empower them. And it's not that anybody said to us that, this is what is important or that is what is important. Right. But I often tell people, and they don't believe me, that I have never seen my mother go to a jeweler's. Ever in my life. And I have never been to a jeweler's, except if I'm invited to inaugurate a jewelry shop. I have never been. I've always heard my mother say, my dancers are my jewels. I have always seen them picking up an old piece of fabric, picking up an old chettinad door, picking up Suf embroidery, more than Swarovski or a branded item. I've never seen a branded item used in this household, in any generation.
because I think they themselves make it a brand once they use it.
No, what I'm saying is that those very grounded truth, justice, honesty, using the great privilege that we had to empower others to make voices for the voiceless. I think these are what was drilled into us without ever having to be told this. And I think it has completely shaped my life and my brother's to an extent, but I think mine completely. That trying to walk a path that is ethical and just and generous becomes the life's mantra.
Wow, man. So I think that is something which is really lacking in today's era, where we talk about authenticity, we talk about not being carried away with the influences around, having your own choices.
Well, you are the first generation who has made career out of influencing and called them influencers.
So maybe, yeah, that's a new stream nowadays, which is picking up so fast. And I would say, yeah, that change is also good, trendy, but if it is done for a great cause. So then, as you said that, yeah, you were being very organic about your growth. How did you find your passion? And like nowadays, people have a confusion that what's my aptitude or something like, oh, what am I good at? They question themselves. Did that happen to you? Did you ever have that super confusion stage in that age where you were?
I wasn't confused, but I was convinced I didn't want to dance.
Oh, wow. So then
It
that's
was the only reality.
really?
Too much work, too much hard work. I can't do it.
Really?
Absolutely.
That I think none of us knew that maybe ma'am was not wanting to dance. Everyone knows that she is the epitome of classical dancing, and knowing that she didn't wanted to dance at all in the initial phases.
No, not till very late.
Oh,
Till
really?
very- I always learnt because all my friends were in my mother's class.
Oh,
And for those few hours when classes were on, I had nobody to play with. So I said, I might as well go to the class. So I always learned. I was always sent off by my school and college to competitions.
okay.
I always won and said, yaar, humse nahi hoga ye. Too much physical work. I'd much rather curl up with a book. I wanted to be a demographer. I wanted to be a developmental worker. Papa and I had these dreams that after I finished the IM, it was always she will go to the IM.
Okay.
That Papa would give up his government job, and we would go around strengthening grassroots organizations like primary health centers, schools in colleges, in villages, in smaller towns. How could we build a management model
Right.
that worked professionally for development in this country? But Papa died the day before I took my entrance exam for IIM. So that dream didn't happen. But it wasn't till I finished my PhD at 21
Okay.
that I was going through a very depressed phase, and I had a broken engagement, which I broke. But it put me in a great depression. And I woke up one morning saying, what am I doing? I want to dance. And for my mother, in many senses, who had lost a life partner in her husband at a very young age,
Yeah.
it was like a second innings that her daughter suddenly wanted to dance. So then for the next 20 years, we were dancing together and creating together.
Wow.
It was wonderful.
I think that itself shows how it's rightly said that you cannot color the eggs of a peacock.
No, but I think what is very important is that most parents are very frustrated because they are not allowed to do what they want.
Right.
And therefore, they try and impose their lack of happiness at the career choice onto their children,
Yeah.
not knowing that
Yeah.
they're doing exactly the same to their children
Right.
as their parents did to them.
Yes.
So I couldn't be a doctor, therefore you study medicine.
Right.
And I think both my parents were so fulfilled in their careers
Right.
that they had absolutely no issues about what we became, as long as we were good human beings. And I'm sorry, the institution and my home and everything is covered with dogs. So there will be dogs in and out of your, but they're very nicely designed dogs. They like people.
So I knew the concept that you can design spaces, but I never knew that you can design
You can,
Dogs?
Yeah, I tell my students that they will only bite you if you go Betal or Besur. Otherwise, they won't bite
So
you.
there would be many instances where they might be biting, because before tuning into the sur, I think there is a lot of Besura thing happening.
You should know us music.
So yeah, ma'am, that is really a blessing in disguise. What you said, that your parents gave you all the freedom, but it was you who chose your calling because of the situations you ended up, and finally
Absolutely.
you came up.
And I think that is the correct way of happening. It
Very
happens
true.
sometimes early, sometimes it happens later.
Yeah.
But I think we have to be open enough
Yes.
to take it, even if it comes at the age of 40.
Yeah. That strength, that courage. to
No, most people are
pick
too
up.
frightened.
Yes, exactly.
And in that being afraid, they miss out on something that could possibly give them great joy and fulfillment.
Thus, the sense of fear that people would judge them, or maybe they would make fun of the downfall they go through. Why this journey? Maybe they don't try on what they really like sometimes.
Yes, yes.
So, I really am very happy to know that finally you found your calling. And then, after you found your calling, ma'am, what has been the biggest challenge? And I am sure to reach at this place, to achieve so much, there has been a lot of ups and downs.
First, I was terrified that I would ruin my mother's name if I was dancing badly, because I was going to all the theaters across the world where she was known and she had been celebrated.
Yeah.
And I kept thinking, oh God, I hope I don't absolutely, completely ruin her name. So that was a great challenge. Another great challenge was, of course, that every time I did well in an exam, people would say, oh, she's Vikram Sarabhai's daughter. He must have pulled some strings. And if I won a dance competition or got a dance award, they'd say, oh, Mrinalini men must have pulled a string.
Yeah.
So one had to negotiate that and prove one's own worth.
Identity.
Rather than say, society says this, therefore.
Right.
And I think negotiating that was fun. But I also, for the first many years of my career, did not think of myself as a creator. I thought I was the perfect medium for somebody else's creation.
Okay.
So Amma would think of something and say half a sentence and I would know exactly what she wanted. But I never thought that I could want to create or I would be able to create. So that came much later.
Okay. So I think I understand that the pressure you went through is very different, which normally others don't go through. Others have a different set of pressure. You had a very different kind of pressure because you belonging to this stature of surrounding, and then the pressure of performances are for different character. And I am very glad to know as a woman that you pulled it very strongly. And you proved everybody that it's not the surrounding behind which is working, it's your inner world.
It was also very silly that, for instance, people would say to me, oh, your mother is a much better dancer. Does that bother you? And they would say to Amma, she's so much younger, she has so much more energy. And Amma and I would look at each other and smile because for us, we were really one spirit in two bodies.
Right.
And I have had extraordinary astral visions. For instance, the first time that Amma and I danced professionally together, we were doing a piece she created called Meera on Mirabai,
right,
where she was the inner Meera, always yearning for Krishna.
Right.
And I was the outward little Meera, wanting to play, wanting to sing, wanting to do what other girls did. And it's only when the two Meeras come together that they become Mirabai.
Wow.
So I remember the sensation of feeling that I was on top of the stage, seeing these two bodies dance, but they were one.
It's just departed with the mirror.
Yeah, it was
other.
extraordinary. And even today, it's nearly 9 years since my mother died, I'm very often on stage or in a rehearsal and I will pull out a hand and something in me will say, that's Amma's hand, it's not yours.
So I think there are sensitive memories associated with little movements in your...
But it's more than that. It's like a cellular feeling.
Yeah.
And science tells us that we all have a cellular memory from many generations,
right,
of humanity, but also of our own ancestry. In some senses, it is feeling what science is proving.
So, ma'am, I think you have a blend of science and art, and in a beautiful manner, the best aesthetical combination of both. And thus, that's the reason why you have very strong opinions about things in a very clear scientific manner. which is actually...
Which can be very irritating for a lot of people.
I doubt it, ma'am, because you are one in a million. Now, as you said that, your mom was a pillar of strength, and that was the only pressure to perform, maybe because you wanted her to be proud of you.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
So she was your inspiration. She was your guiding force. At the same time, she was the one whom you wanted to be pleased with your performances.
Yes.
Yeah. So one more question comes after listening to this, which is the most special memory of somebody so close, other than your mom, and something which you have in your soul till now regarding Ahmedabad, the city and the family and the old memories which revolve in your head after when I say Ahmedabad.
There is an extraordinary family and a family business here in Ahmedabad called the Kamtiwalas.
Right.
They originally are from the Rani no Hajiro, Raja na Hajira. That was where they were. And from the age of about 3, I have seen my mother Amma, Gira Ben of Calico Museum, Mallika Sarabhai, who was also a collector for Shreya School, going to them. So they would deal with the grandfather. And then I have been dealing with the next generation. And my children have been dealing with the third generation, are still dealing with the third generation.
Okay.
And I think that was a very special quality of Ahmedabad that I fear is disappearing now. But it was a very special quality. You went to people who, you were saying that your Nana used to be very closely associated with my mother.
Yes.
And those are memories that I'm sure both of them, your Nana is alive, but I'm sure both of them had.
Sure.
And little incidents that happened one day in town hall, the electricity went off and, whatever.
Yeah.
But there are so many memories, and when they become intergenerational, it becomes a very special thing. You talk in today's context, you talk of loneliness, the loneliness of waiting for blue ticks.
Yes.
And what happens when there is no blue tick? People get depressed and
validation.
If there are intergenerational face-to-face relationships, and they don't have to be friends, Vyavar.
Yes.
We have this word Vyavar. Vyavar can be anything from a marriage to my buying a pan at your shop every evening.
Right. Definitely.
But they are all face-to-face
connections, which are deeper.
And for my memory, there was an antique dealer called Manu Bhai. And I remember again going as a child, and then when I started having my own taste, going back, and his wife took over, and then his daughter-in-law took over, and they're still there.
Yeah.
They're still there, but nobody remembers them.
Right.
We who have had the privilege remember them and still have these associations. And I think these are very special memories of the city.
When you change cities, that's where you remember how little memories were important.
Of course.
Because today's generation has to keep on migrating. So the originality, which they miss, that I'm keeping on hopping from this place to this place. And then they just remember the childhood original memories where they used to go to this, as you said, pan wala or maybe ice cream wala, or maybe anyone.
Whatever.
So this is the connection of a space, people, and emotion.
We have recently, this is Darpana's 75th anniversary.
Oh, wow.
So we are celebrating. We've created a performance earlier this year called Meanwhile Elsewhere, which is inspired by a book by Italo Calvino called Invisible Cities, which most architects and most urban planners take as their Bible.
Okay.
And if you haven't read the book, you should read it because because it's a very interesting book, and they say the description of cities and the detailing of cities in this book is more than they've ever learned in urban planning. That's where they get there. But we have created this performance, and it's about cities, but it's about cities of the memories, cities of imagination, cities of stories, not only physical cities, but cities which have a voice, cities which have remembered that they used to be something else and now they are skyscrapers. And in it, there is one scene that a co-actor and I wrote, because both of us remember in the late 60s and early 70s, a restaurant, one of the first sophisticated restaurant on the Ahmedabad called Bankura.
Okay.
Now, I'm sure if you ask your grandfather, he will remember it very well, because Bankura used to be a place, where there was live music. So we would go and dance.
Okay.
It's the first place where a cappuccino was introduced into Ahmedabad.
Okay.
And a baked Alaska was.
Okay.
It's funny because there is this scene of just me creating the city out of words and memories in the show.
Right.
And you should see the way audiences have reacted. We've done 12 performances. Little children saying, "Ha, Dadaji ye baat kareli ki ha kaka kehta tha ki we used to go to Bankura and we used to dance."
Right.
And somebody said, "Ha, sauti sundar chokariya tyahan aati thi." So we used to go and hang out there to look at the girls. But when you talk of cities, the cities are also made up of memories. What you were just saying.
Yes.
Cities are made up of memories. Cities are made up of smells.
Yes.
And I think in today's urban planning, we have forgotten all of that.
Yes.
We think of glass and steel and building buildings, but we don't make the nooks and crannies. Have you heard that in France, they are now going back into having this concept that within 2 square kilometers, a community should have everything they want. Walkability. And there should be everything from shops to schools to institutions to libraries to theaters, so that it becomes a community again.
Yes.
It becomes something where you pass by the same shop every day for 11 years while you go to school.
Yes.
And if nothing else, you raise your hands and say hello.
Yeah.
Rather than anonymous shops and shop fronts, which could be any city in the world. Today you go to a mall, it could be anything. Even our smaller cities are trying to become faceless like that.
Yes.
And which is one of the problems of planning and aesthetics in this country, that we all want to be like wannabes.
Yes.
You have to have a Kutch earthquake for one village to decide that they will become what they were originally, so that they could show people what their culture is. Otherwise, what do we want? We want glass fronts, and we want Zara, and we want Marriott, and
I completely resonate with what you're saying, and I think the research recently talks about that the more proximity you have with any human or an entity, the more warmth you will develop with it.
Of course.
No matter you like it or not, but the proximity makes the huge difference. So as we say, walkability, proximity and accessibility is something which is lacking in today's expansive world. People want to spread, and I think that way they are losing the coziness of warmth and emotion.
India is always about 50 years behind the West, which it emulates and copies. So when the West is now switched to organic food, more and more people here are eating non-organic. Now there's, of course, a small sliver of people who want. But what I'm saying is we take so long to catch up.
Right.
That science and ecology and the environment have proved something else by the time we catch up to it.
Very true.
So you were talking earlier of how people buy more and more cars as the roads get broader. In many parts of the world, people are giving up cars to go back to bicycles.
Very true. I mean, they are rather choosing to leave liabilities and live carefree rather than buying things
and always wondering how you're going to pay the EMI.
Yeah, and manage it, maintain it, and again, at the end, it's going to devalue. So the more you spend, the more losses you go. So better they choose this public transports, and the simplest way of.
But Ahmedabad Metro is a case in point. How many people have actually come off the roads because the metro exists? I don't think people have come off the roads. People use the metro, but they use it as a subsidiary or as an alternate. Not that the roads are so bad, because everything becomes a status in this country.
Very true.
Everything is about
affordability.
My God, you're wearing khadi? How cheap. Not understanding that khadi is probably the most expensive fabric you can possibly get, to get good khadi. But we have a caste system in our heads,
right,
which affects everything. It affects what you wear. It affects which car you go in. There's a caste system in cars. There's a caste system in which hotels you stay in. There's a caste system in which kind of food you eat, which restaurants you go to. So when we talk about the caste system, it is so ingrained in us that unless each of us consciously makes an effort to break all the caste systems in our head, we are going to be stuck in the same place.
I think this is the new normal. The caste earlier used to be as per the races. Yeah. Today's caste are because of the income groups and having lack of personal branding, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You have to depend on somebody to give you the stamp of approval.
Yes.
To say, oh, I am now legitimate because I'm wearing Prada.
Yeah. So I think that the new generation needs to very well understand from the icon herself, because she creates her own persona. And I think if somebody would want to resonate with her, I think you can stop running after brands and rather focus more on creating a self brand.
It's a deep insecurity.
Yes.
It's a deep fear of log kya kahenge.
हाँ.
मार तो गोली. क्या फर्क पड़ता है लोग क्या कहेंगे? How do you feel about yourself? Do you feel every morning when you wake up, do you say, hello, another day, let's do something good? It's insecurity coming out in a million different ways.
Yes, I completely agree with you, ma'am. So similarly, with this talk, I want to know, what does modern Indian women mean to you in today's context? What is modern Indian women?
To me, a modern Indian woman is a woman who does not think that the ultimate pat in the shoulder has to come from a man.
Right.
Because I have seen very, very successful entrepreneurs, educationists, politicians who ultimately want validation from the father or from the male guru or from the husband. I think when we stop that, we will be truly modern in our outlook.
Very true, ma'am. And I think women should have faith in their own self. I mean, the day they'll understand that I am myself a validation. I think things will.
I think that is true of human beings.
Yeah.
I think our men are as enslaved. They don't realize that they are enslaved.
Right.
But kya mard hai? It ruins so many men's lives.
Yes.
Because this idea of mardangi is what makes them prisoners. Yes. Unless you have a six-pack, you are not a mardan. If you want to cry, you are not a mardan. They are, at least women know that we are in a prison and need to break it. Right. Men don't even realize. So I think for all human beings, the journey has to be inward and not only outward.
Right, ma'am. And that's the beauty that nowadays people have started directing movies which talks about these.
I'm very glad.
Yeah.
I'm very glad. I think some of the independent movies that are coming out are really, really looking into what needs to be looked at.
Yes, in a different perspective and very strongly, boldly showcased. Ma'am, how has motherhood transformed your soul, your thought process? Because normally in Indian context, there are a lot of judgments. There is a lot of hidden agendas that once you are a mom, this should happen and this should not be done. So how has that take a toll on you, and how have you reformed it?
I don't think motherhood changed me very much.
Yeah.
I think perhaps what it did do is, I think the tenderness one feels when breastfeeding one's child is a tenderness that I find I have not been able to replicate.
Okay.
And it's just those few months, maybe a year. It's a connection that you never make with another human being. You don't even make it with the child that you had breastfed. It's just that period. Other than that, I had a family that was incredibly supportive. I was rehearsing 6 hours after the birth of my daughter. She was strapped to my chest. I used to take them around everywhere, and they knew exactly the kind of life they were coming into. That here was a mother who was running around, taking them with her, not really thinking that school was that important, but right. That if I had become a mother, it was to spend time with the children. It was to see that I was there for them. Otherwise, why become a mother? I was not a mother who got pressurized saying, "Acha, kab aane wale hain issues, kab hame kuch karte hain," etc. That wasn't the case. So I only became a mother when I really wanted to become a mother. Again, like dancing, I thought never.
Yes.
Then it happened.
Never say never.
So I don't think motherhood transformed me very much.
So you were like a kangaroo, carrying your kids
very
everywhere.
much like a kangaroo. Very
in
much.
Your pouch, your warmth.
Absolutely.
And I think that warmth, that pouch, made them today what they are.
And I think we encourage this with everybody in Darpada who has children. I just say, bring them here and let them wander around.
I see.
Yeah, exactly.
These beautiful souls.
And so many of my staff's children I basically run around here. They know what discipline is. They know when they can shout and when they mustn't shout. There's a class going on. So they understand those boundaries. Right. They understand the freedom. And they understand that their parents' work is important.
I think this inclusive approach towards the work culture, what you're talking of, that this has now brought up the change, that inclusivity of women in the modern workforce. They have been granted now the freedom of closely balancing work.
Can I disagree? They have not been granted. They have taken.
Yeah, yes.
Nobody grants.
Nobody grants, but I think this modern women, as you say, that they picked up their shoes well, and I think there are a lot of change makers who are trying to do that.
Sure.
So that's the beautiful change, and I'm glad to know that you have already done that way back. Ma'am, you have worn many hats, and you have been into multiple roles. Like you are an actor, you are a dancer, activist, writer, speaker, entrepreneur in a lot of ways. And which role you think is closely connected to you rather than dance?
I think all of them are just me. Okay. I don't see them as separate roles.
Okay.
I just see them as me communicating and expressing myself in one way or the other. If I just now thought that I could make a point to your viewers by standing on my head, I would stand on my head, except the mic would fall. But other than that, there are things I can explain better in one or the other, but they're all strings to the same bow.
It's like a sitar, like a guitar.
It is. It's all strings. So I always say to people say to me, what is your favorite color?
Right.
And I said, why does it have to be the favorite every day? Today I like pink. Tomorrow I might like white. Yes. You know, this binary. We think in binaries. Life is not about binaries.
Right.
You can.
It's a union.
You can. Yeah, it's like a bouquet of flowers, or it should be like a bouquet of flowers.
Yes.
But there are different colors, and you might get the fragrance of one. When you're walking down a garden path, you get different fragrances as you walk. Why would you want to say, did I like that better, or did I? Why is this always on a balance, on trying to say this is better or this is not? Life is not a zero-sum game. So it's just me doing this, that, and the other. You know, it's not a different me doing one thing and a different me doing the other.
So I think it's a wonderful way to showcase that nowadays, like this trend has come up. Say if there's somebody who's a doctor, who's also a cyclist, who's also an actor, and they showcase it very boldly on the medias and everywhere, and which is so wonderful. Earlier, there was a stereotypical trend that if you are a doctor, you can't like show your personal life, and you have to be like a doctor with this coat and all. The trend has changed, and I think what you say, I think you actually have like lived your life 50 years in advance. You're like a time traveling woman. I think you might be having a gadget where you see the trend shift and you already start living it way before when people start adapting it. As I know that your dramas, your poetries have been like a bold depiction. It's a strong storytelling. And which story would you say, or which play of you did talk about the earlier play with your mom, but other than that, a strong play which gives a very strong message to the society around?
Well, I do a performance piece called Sita's Daughters, which I've done about 600 times.
600 times?
In 40 countries, in 3 languages. I do it in Gujarati, Hindi, and English. And I have done it to an audience of 8 rape victims, multiple rape victims in a Pachat Gaon in Kutch. Mm-hmm. I've also done it at the Smithsonian Institute. I've done it at the Kennedy Center. I've done it for our parliamentarians. I've done it for 8,000 BD workers in Riyadh. So it talks about women of change. It's called Sita's Daughters because I start with my Sita, who says, Ram, what did you need to prove? If you are a god, then you knew that deer was a Rakshasa. You knew that Ravana was going to take me. So what is it that you wanted? Why did you go through this? And from there, she says, there are many Sita's daughters today who are questioning. And then I go into the life of women that I have culled from case studies and so on. A rape victim from Uttar Pradesh, who because of her caste and the fact that the judge and the principal who raped her are the same caste, her case doesn't. I mean, what you read in the papers every day.
Yes.
But yes, so I think Sita's Daughters, there are other people who are doing thesis on Sita's Daughters. It's being taught as a script in various women's studies programs. So that was a major milestone. I mean, if you have make me choose one, I just said I don't
Yes,
like to
yes.
choose, but
Yeah, because I think you have a huge versatile list of performances, but at least if our viewers want to know that what they should actually watch, which created a huge revolution, and I think this is the one she's talking of, and it talks about a very sensitive topic, and I think that really makes me so emotional whenever I read in these newspapers and all these things happening. I just feel the pain because I am a mother of two daughters. So I can't understand how this happens. So let's go to the other segment, which talks, because this is the architect's diary, and till now we were talking more towards the designing. You are a design itself because you've designed your life. So now we are showcasing people who are designers, they've designed their lives, and they're designing others' life, and I think the people from the nation too. So the question is that, ma'am, what does space mean to you as a dancer, as a performer, and this architecture, volume, and design? How does that influence your performance?
huge, hugely huge. Amma studied at Shantiniketan, where there was no distinction between the outdoors and the indoors. So when she had the architect Kanvin, they built Darpana.
Right.
She said, I don't want closed spaces. I need to feel, even if I'm in a covered space, I need to feel nature. And you can see from the architecture. Raj Rewal once gave me one of the greatest compliments. He said, Mallika, seeing you dance is like architecture in motion.
Very true, ma'am.
And I think the space you are in just completely changes your thinking. And science and research prove this.
Yes.
High ceilings, for instance, or domed ceilings, and what they do to your pattern of thinking. I think for me, architectural space is an integral part of my being, of my creation. When I'm choreographing, I'm thinking in terms of architecture. I'm thinking in terms of geometry. So it's a huge, and you will see from that, Prana, that it's of the earth.
Yes. Elements of earth.
Yes, and it's nature and earth and green, and it's not it's not technology built.
Yes.
And yet there's a lot of technology.
Yes.
So sustainability has been a very important factor in Darpana's life for many years. I think we were one of the earliest institutions to go solar, long before solar became the buzzword. The theatre is made out of 100% recycled bricks from old bricks. It's got tuna and not plaster.
Right.
So we use all of this is lime plaster. And I think that's a very strong sensibility. That's why I resonate very deeply with architects and architecture, and with people trying to understand traditional architecture in each of the climatic zones in India. Why do people in the Northeast build on stilts? And, there's a logic to it, which architecture schools and making us do modern things seems to have forgotten. And that is what resonates to me. Why do the Kachi bungas remain circular? Yes. There's a science to it. And in earthquake zones, that's how it should be.
Yes.
But we have broken all of those. So I resonate with architecture that is,
very true. So I think ma'am deeply supports vernacular architecture, and she talks about the senses and the solitude. We talk of all the five senses, as you say. You perform with your senses, and I think that is something you are so deeply connected to. And also there is a play of light, acoustics, and aesthetic appeal. As we say that, blindly copying the modern architecture is a way of aesthetic appeal, but I think it doesn't resonate your identity. But light and acoustic done in a very vernacular manner, I think that is something brings life to just the concrete and bricks.
I mean, you as an architect know that the way a room or space is lit can have such a profound effect on your thinking, on your mood, on the way you feel, whether you feel elevated or you feel depressed or repressed. These are all elements that, and in Hinduism, why is it that we pray to the Panchabhut? Because they affect us.
Yes.
And if people who are building spaces don't understand this, what is Vastu after all? It's a science.
Yes.
We might
Yes,
have
yes.
forgotten the scientific aspect of
Approach,
it.
yeah.
But modern day, we know that to take a wind current in a particular way makes sense, or to get the morning sun makes sense. I mean, in countries like Finland, at each crossroads, they have a light that gives them the feeling of sun, because not having sunlight for 6 months has led to great depression in that country. So the government understands and has put up these lights which make you feel you're in the sunlight. Now, what does Surya Namaskar say?
Yes.
It says very much the same thing. It's that, you have to try and connect these things, whether it's light or sound. What is the sound of Om? What is the
Yes.
what is the mantra of the Ma in Om? Or what is the sound of a bell and when it resonates? Or the Tibetan bowls, which go round and round and reach a pitch that resonates with the brain function.
Very true.
These are all extremely scientific things, and we are just rediscovering them as though we've just created the Rubik's Cube or something.
Yeah.
But in all ancient cultures, in different ways, these are talked about.
They already existed. I think we don't know how the origins actually started, but we are just feeling as if we rediscovered right now.
Yes.
They have been since ages.
No, and it's great that we are now discovering in a
Yes.
way that is more measurable.
Yes.
But that's what it is.
So that is wonderful to know. I think all the architects, all the designers can now understand the role like we all play in the lives of dancers and artists and all. And I think that's really very beautiful to understand architecture from your eyes. So now I would want to ask that how do physical spaces, like if you forget about just the buildings, when you go on the streets, how does these temples and theaters, old streets, maybe a natural scenario near the river or something, help you to find an energy and a spirit which motivates you to perform something unique or out of the box?
When I see a lot of boxes on our streets, I want to break that box.
Yeah. So this modern streets and the earlier streets, they were way different. Today's streets has a combination of different elements which didn't exist before. You used to do a lot of street plays. So how has that changed? The modern urban, blend of streets has changed now. So
yeah, it's become like a aggression contest, hasn't it?
yes.
Who can run down whom, who can run over whom, who can push past whom. And the places where you could meet and sit and be neighborly, for want of a better word, have diminished because space is at a shortage. We want to fit in more and more of what we consider is entertainment into a small space. So more and more eateries, more and more. Everything is, there's very little room to actually expand.
Yes.
And that's why people are now going back to nature.
Yes.
Because you need that space. Just to be yourself, you need that space. And a lot of modern cities are just aggression.
There is a fear to run to places rather than...
And there is a fear.
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
Any very special memory associated with your college days and IIM? Because it has a wonderful...
IIM,
surrounding.
you went into IIM and the architecture was so magnificent that you felt really guilty if you didn't study well. I remember, and at that time, I was a great fan of Ayn Rand, the writer.
Right.
And her books, which I don't agree with at all just now because they're very neo-capitalist and very much I for myself and I will get ahead at the cost of everybody else. But they used to talk about Fountainhead, for instance, talks about something that was very similar, sitting on that Louis Kahn building or looking out over a balcony. You felt very humbled and you felt that you had to contribute. And I think that was important.
It's so beautiful to know that how these physical entities completely modify the work output. And that's why it's said that, the buildings can also talk.
Sure.
And that is the story which earlier, history is also that Diwalo ke bhi kaan hote hain. So that is very beautiful to know. As you had a wonderful college life and then you had an amazing doctorate degree, what would you want to say to our young minds today, that how do they stick to their roots, the inherent culture we have, and how do they really adapt to our origins? Because there's a too much of
Our origin is not a fixed point.
yeah.
What we consider our culture is just a little fragment. And most people think our culture is Garbo. No, there are 100 other folk forms, even in Gujarat. And Garbo might be the one you know, but to somebody else, it might be the Rumal dance.
Right.
That is.
Right.
So our very questioning it, I think we need to constantly be in love with learning.
Yeah.
And accept that we can be wrong at every step.
Yes.
That what we think from our very narrow perspective, what we think is the truth from that narrow perspective, might not be the truth at all when you open up. And that you don't have to always prove you're right. You can say, I don't know, let me learn.
Yes.
And today learning has become so easy with the wide web.
Yes.
You know, going to the library is no longer going to the library.
Yes. It's going to a digital world.
Yeah, it takes away a lot of the pleasure, I have to say. I love smelling books. But it's so easy. You just Google something and you get an answer. Now, whether that's a complete answer or not, at least you've got an answer. But we still try and say we know it. So in the hundreds of thousands of Indians who say, we will protect the Ramayana, we will protect Ram. There are 300 versions of the Ramayana.
Yes.
There's not a single version that's valid. They are all versions. Rama is a mythological character that we have developed and made into God.
Right.
To make a God is a human need.
Yes.
It's not God's need to be made into a God.
This is a very strong point, ma'am. I think the viewers would have a wonderful thought-provoking idea when you say that being a God is a human's need and it's not a God's need.
Yes. And so when we say, oh, I know my Ramayana, you know your Ramayana.
Yes.
But there are 300 others.
Very true.
So who says that your Ramayana is
correct one?
Again, the binary. I have to be the victor and you have to be the losers. Why can't we say there are 300 versions? You can choose which one you like as your Ramayana.
Yes.
Rather than say, name
So the absorptivity, as you're talking about, there has to be a lot of absorptivity.
Again, insecurity. What we are talking about is only if I feel insecure that I have to say mine is bigger than yours, mine is stronger than yours, mine is greater than yours. Why? Why should it be? Does a tree say to another tree, I'm bigger than you? No, it doesn't.
They just say,
and underneath the roots are connected. One tree says to an entire forest, there is a drought coming, and be careful. That's the science of trees.
That's the beauty of hidden strengths, which maybe virtually it's not seen, but there is something called as connections and the bond, which I think keeps them going. And from a sapling to a tree.
We as human beings need to refine. Then there are a lot of mental illness will be solved and a lot of loneliness and feeling out of it would be solved if we can just
support each other, I think.
Yeah, just say that life is not a competition.
Yes. We are each other's strength rather than competitors.
We have to become.
Yes. That's actually very lacking because I think people need to find shortcuts nowadays. Because they have not seen the struggle their ancestors have done. So they've been blessed.
They are going through another struggle. They're going through a struggle of having to feel that they are the most befriended person on the net.
Yes.
And that's a huge struggle with insecurity. Again, we come back to 2 or 3 words of binaries and the insecurities and the lack of courage to look inwards.
Yes. And to accept that there is a flaw. I mean, I think we already answered a lot about it, but today's media, virtual culture, that's a different culture now. Religious culture, this is a virtual culture. And how is it changing today's scenario? And this AI, especially social media and the reels and the validation, we already talked of, but especially the role of AI and the virtual culture. These 2 words have played a pragmatic role in today's upbringing of the new Gen Z. So what would you want to say? How do they cater to these new vocabularies.
I think a lot of this has to do with one's grip on reality. Right? If one's only reality is virtual, then there's a problem, because then you get psychotic about actual relationships.
Very true, man. Very true.
I think if you have both,
right,
you are grounded here, but you still find the excitement of AI. I find ChatGPT very fun and exciting and
very helpful
as a partner. But it is a partner. It's not my boss. It's not my only reality.
They can't command you, but they can assist you.
I think when young parents, in order to have time for themselves, stick an iPad or a phone in front of a 8-month-old child, you are limiting that child's grip on reality.
Yes.
Don't have children. Why have children? You have to give them time. You have to give dogs time. You have to give relationships time.
Yes.
And time is what people don't seem to have in doing nothing.
And this is the irony of today's situation, and I think that's very challenging to cater to and to actually like abide by.
But I think the change will come when you bring up your children not to be girls, not to be surtis, but to become human beings.
Yes,
humane beings, not
true.
A gender,
yes,
not a class, not a caste, not a religion.
Very true.
But belonging to humanity.
Very true.
And I
very
think
true.
Mother by mother and parent by parent, we can change the world.
I think that's why I think feminism or something eventually would not even exist, because at the end what matters is humanity.
Absolutely.
So rather than picking onto the sections
those battles have to be fought.
Yes.
But without losing sight of where we are going.
Yes, yes. So this is the burning issue everywhere, that this gender discrepancies and
there are huge discrepancies. There's
very
huge injustice in this world, huge, and especially in a country like ours.
Yes,
huge injustice.
I understand where it comes from, but now I'm very hopeful for where it will go to, because looking at the growth today's modern women are doing and the way they are approaching towards their professions and their strengths, I'm very optimistic towards the change which is coming, and I wish that it comes very faster.
I'm also very optimistic about youth.
Very
for
true.
All the young people who are lost and so on, there are more and more young people, for instance, coming out of IITs and IIMs, who are saying, we want to make the world better.
Very true.
And I think that is so exciting. I meet so many young people who are not doing the usual thing, who are not going the way of your banker or your engineer or whatever, and who genuinely want to innovate for the change. They want to innovate to make life easier for people. They want to create financial systems that are equitable. And I would say bravo to them.
Yes, ma'am. I am so glad to know that a lot of women are trying to be the change they want to see. That's simple. And you being with me, talking about this, you are the best example. You have brought the change which you want to see via your own persona. And I think your kids, your upbringing itself is the best example that how a surrounding can bring the change. And how much it takes a village to raise a soul. And that if the village is union and they have the same spirit and they have the same thinking, I am very sure that there will be lots and lots of more satellites up there, and they will be resonating with your father's spirit, and then you'll be the most happiest to see all these satellites revolving around and bringing marvelous results in this world. So then also I want to know that how the government and the institutions are playing the role in conserving the culture, the heritage, and the arts we have. Any special takes or any special experiences you want to share, that how you can bring the change? What is happening now? What you want to see in future that institutions and government can do to conserve?
I have a very strong take on this, so maybe you don't even want to hear it, but I think the government that we have today has a policy of only promoting what they consider as part of Hindutva,
right,
which is not Hinduism. it's a very militant, Abrahamic view of a very open philosophy. And so institutions have been brainwashed into a certain kind of thinking. Many great institutions have collapsed in the last 10 years.
Right.
With great purposeful attention being paid to that destruction. Artists are supported only if they toe the line. However, I think that in its best form, and this is true of several European countries, a government that does not interfere in the content
Right.
of art and supports the arts, because the arts cannot survive without support, financial support. Therefore, one knows that a sensible and genuinely culture-loving and unafraid government can do a tremendous amount to nurture culture. But alas, it's not happening here.
So I think there's a strong message out there that I think we need few things to conserve things which we are losing on.
You know, the Vedas and the Upanishads are a reflection of people asking questions. Questions that were uncomfortable for the person answering.
Right.
That is the essence of Indian culture. To disagree.
Yes.
Disagreement does not mean enmity.
Yes.
That is the fundamental change in our thinking. That just to ask a question is a gunah. And I think that is the fundamental thing that is reducing us to just a monoculture, when I think our greatest civilizational gift and strength is the many, many, many different strands that make up the banyan that becomes
One
our
day.
civilization.
Yes. So beautifully answered, ma'am. Very softly, very strongly said what you said. And I think all our viewers will definitely resonate with what she's saying, that we need to be into our roots very strongly ourselves. Then and then we could be asking for what we want. So I think I'm sure that when you developed Darpana, you had a very strong clarity of what you wanted. And as you said, all these building elements, what you maybe would have asked for was your brainchild, because it resonated your personality. So is there a specific corner in Darpana, and is there a specific portion which really has a very strong message?
The cafe is made 100% out of recycled material.
Okay.
And as I said, sustainability has been very much a core dharma. We don't cut down trees, we build around trees.
Yes.
The theatre, the fact that it is technologically one of the best theatres in the country, and yet it is made of sustainable bricks, sustainable lime, the cooling of it is passive cooling. To me, technology and sustainability are married. For people, it is, "Arey yaar, since sustainable hai to dehati ho." On the contrary, that's the wonderful challenge. How do you make something that is sustainable? So the theatre, I think, is very reflective of me. The cafe is very reflective of me. The fact of keeping this, my parents bought this at an auction in little pieces and put it together. But the fact of having all the modern conveniences like an air conditioning and Wi-Fi and whatever else one needs, and still having a Haveli look like this. The floor, for instance, that's another sustainable. You'll have to take a close-up of the floor. You know, there's this wonderful Japanese mantra, if you like, or belief, that if you have a chair, don't throw away the clothes.
Yes.
You create something that makes a feature of the stair. So the flooring here is the traditional Kerala flooring, and part of it had cracked.
Right.
So the point was that in the refurbishing, did we want to break the whole floor and create a new, in which case the whole floor would be wasted?
Yes.
And both my architect and I felt, no, let's make a feature of it. So we have made a feature of it. So the cracked bits were taken out. The rest of the red floor is 50 years old. And the brass lines and the black were made into a feature.
Wow, man.
But that is our philosophy. And I think
Very true.
the new cafe,
Mhm.
Table by the Tree, which is our air-conditioned cafe, every single piece of furniture is made from what used to be our previous stage. So
Oh.
if you sit at a table, at least 100 artists have performed on that wood from where you are eating.
Wow, man. So that wood has a lot to speak.
Exactly. So that is, I think, very much a fundamental part of my philosophy.
Very
I
true.
learned it from Amma, who used to hug trees long before hugging trees became famous.
Oh.
And she would go and talk to her trees, and she would go and sing to them, and all of that. So I grew up looking at this crazy woman doing all this.
Ma'am, I think you are so blessed.
I am. That I
Yes,
am.
yes, definitely.
That
Because
I am.
this would be some rare qualities any kid would have been upbringed into. And I think that's why foreigners are really studying this research, that how can Indian families sustain in this much of financial crunch and yet have so many kids getting married in a lavish way, because they had this fundamentals, as you saying, something torn, they will convert it into something reusable, and then the
Some of
third.
our greatest craft came
Yes,
out like that.
yes.
Out of the need to save, the
Yes.
need to preserve, the need to not throw away.
That is the strength, and I think that is something very unique of another culture. I'm proud being born in the culture where everything matters, and still it has its own purpose to serve in each stage. Like when there is a cloth, then it converts into a rag, but still it helps to clean. So that is beautiful, ma'am. How does rural India, like as we know that nowadays folk dances and tribal dances, everything is still intact in the rural areas only.
It's not.
Somewhere. But that's what I'm saying. Where it is not, what and how? How should we conserve it? Like
We try, and it is in Darpana, what we try is we have a group called Janavak, the
Right.
voice of the people. And from 1980 onwards, when we found that even in the deepest down forests, there were people dancing to film songs and not at all to their traditional song, we started Janavak to try and understand what a community means.
right.
Because dancing in that community comes from a lifestyle. It comes with a rite of passage. It's not an item.
Yes.
So we tried to bring in families from different communities. So there would be the grandparents who would have their own memories of things and who might be able to tell you कि हम इसमें हरा धागा ही use करते हैं क्योंकि,
Right.
which the next generation are already forgotten the क्योंकि. They would say
Yes.
हमारे में तो ऐसे ही होता है,
Right.
but they couldn't tell you why.
Right.
And then the third generation who were keeping something else alive. So we would document these, we would learn from them, we would learn the context, the anthropological context of a particular community and so on.
Okay.
And then when there is an awakening and when there's suddenly a great grandchild who says, "Hey, I want to learn," there is a resource that they can learn from.
So you're building a virtual asset for the country.
For the I hope so.
Yeah, you are, I think,
And
indeed.
a memory so that you can go back to.
And live the moments in a very modern times and still bring the versions to it.
Yeah.
And this, I think, modern schools, this international schools, or maybe Indian schools are also trying to do that at an early stage. They're
Yeah.
taking to the visits and they're trying to not use like Bollywood numbers in their annual performances and use these old folk songs.
And we can be creating new folk songs.
Yes,
maybe.
for
You know,
sure.
It's not that our culture stopped at a certain period.
Yes, there was just an agenda. You can just reform in the modern version also.
Sure.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, how do you feel that both of your parents, like Vikram sir and Mrinalini ma'am, they both received Padma Bhushan, and you being on the same track and you received such a privileged and such an honorable award, Padma Bhushan, how do you feel that you carrying the legacy and achieving the same stature of your parents? How does that feel?
You know, things like that don't cross my mind. I don't really care what my legacy will be. I want to do today what I can do today. And there's a private joke going on in our family that we are the only four, my brother and I and my parents, who've all got a Padma for a different reason.
Right.
So there's always a joke saying, shall we have our Padma moment? You know, there's always a spoof going on that. But who has the time to think of legacies? I have so much to do today that I can make a difference with. And, you know, once one is dead, one is dead. I mean, if people want to think badly of you, so be it. Who cares?
I think that's such an humble and a very down to earth approach you have for your achievements, and that is what people and youth and everyone can learn from her. Only few questions which would I would like to ask is that management has been your professional skill, but how have you reflected it in your personal life? Right?
I manage my household very well with 10 dogs. No, I think had I not got that management training, it would have been very difficult to run Darpana as a non-profit, and especially with the political stands I've taken, with the funding shrinking by the minute. It would have been very difficult to run had I not had those basic skills of management. I think management teaches you more than skills, it teaches you a way of looking at things from different perspectives, and I think that is what is very important. For me, those 2 years, in many ways, were very important.
Yes, ma'am. Very true. And the last question, as you said, you are very grounded with your achievements, but still, a last question says that you being a youth icon, a woman which everyone looks upon, and still every day you look upon to finding new goals in your life. There's always an inner fuel which runs and you want to do everything different every morning. What is that inner source of motivation and the inner joy?
I love life. I think I find life beautiful, very difficult often, but very beautiful. And if I can light a spark every day in somebody's life, it can be the smallest thing. But if I can let them get away from the tedium and the misery that modern life is, even for a minute, then that's what there is to look forward to every day.
So I think you validate your self-worth in a very wide way, and I think that's extremely commendable. Your inner fuel is all the time refueled on its own, and that's why I think from galaxies to ghungroos, you rightly proved the statement, right? That your father started from the galaxies, but you have achieved the ghungroos with the same stature of humongous contribution it makes for the society. And I think you said that I don't believe that I would leave a legacy, but I think consciously, unconsciously, you're leaving such a huge legacy for lots and lots of people to get inspired from. So just a last statement you want to say for the future generations.
I think we have to understand that our lives can be precious if we understand that it's not about who I am, who I become, but about what I am and what I can become. Can I become that little fragrance that brings a smile to people's faces? Or is it more important that I buy my 5th Mercedes? For me, I know it's that smile, that sudden voice in my ear that comes and says, Mallika ma'am, you don't know me, but I was in college when I heard you speak and it changed my life. And then all the aggression, all the defeats, and there are many defeats, all the setbacks become worth it. Because you know that every day you're bringing a little light into the world.
Wonderful, ma'am. I think that's really, really so inspiring. And I feel myself as a different soul. When I sit back from this chair, I'll go back home, I'll be a different version of myself. So there is a segment, the last segment. I'm sure, ma'am, you would like it. And we have reframed the name as the quick canvas because
Good.
your life is a painting, it's a journey, and the canvas. And the colors have been versatile. So how do we understand in the quick minutes? So the first question is, ma'am, your go-to dance move.
My go-to dance move?
Yes, yes.
Get up and shimmy.
Huh?
Get up and shimmy.
Okay. Okay. The best advice you've ever received.
Be yourself.
Wow. A surprising insight from your field.
That for every 1,000 hours of rehearsal, it's 1 hour of a performance. And unless you have the joy in the 1,000 hours, you will never be true to yourself.
The biggest risk you've ever taken.
Having children.
I think think this will create a lot of opinions, and I think mostly would be positive because it's itself challenging. The secret talent nobody knows about you.
Whispering to dogs.
Wow, I think they know better than anybody in Darpana knows what you're going through. So if somebody adds a chip in them, I think they'll be knowing a lot. One book everyone should read.
Book of Life.
Book of Life. 3 words that describe you.
Boisterous, bold, hopefully not boring.
No, you are not at all boring. So I think 3rd word would be something else. A mental health tip you wish more people followed.
Be true to yourself, be honest with yourself, and then you avoid a lot of that comes out of lying to yourself continuously and having to live behind masks all the time. Take away your mask to yourself.
The last thoughtful thing you bought for yourself.
I'm not a buyer, so I have to think what I bought.
But that itself is a statement that you don't buy, you owe.
I am really not a consumer type. Yesterday I was at a lecture when somebody said that any of us from middle class up have enough clothes for the next 6 generations of our family, and yet we continuously consume. So I don't even remember what I bought last.
You bought a soul, maybe every day. A mistake that made you stronger.
Falling in love with the wrong guy.
I think this statement has a very strong story, and all what matters is what she is today. Dance or drama?
Always drama. Always drama. One can create drama out of any dance. One can create drama out of any story, out of any episode. Talking to you is drama.
Stage or street?
Stage, always.
Always, yes. A quote that stuck with you forever.
A code.
Yes, quote.
A quote that stuck with me. The fault, dear Brutus, lies not in the stars, but in us, that we are underlings.
It's a very strong and a very powerful quote. And
Julius Caesar, Shakespeare.
Yes. One Indian art form we must protect at all cost.
Let's be very close to home, Bhavai.
Yes. And the last, Bharatnatyam or Kuchipudi?
Bharatanatyam for the philosophical me, Kuchipudi for the playful me. So if I'm in the Shiva mood, then Bharatanatyam. If I'm in the Krishna mood, then Kuchipudi.
So they all, as you said, it's a banyan tree ending up with the roots which are same expressions. I'm sure, ma'am, I think I'm done with the quick canvas round. To summarize what we all witness right now, I think she was the Mallika Sarabhai, and I'm sure she was a lighthouse in emotion. And I think everybody agrees that she is something which can't be expressed in words, but she's a revolution. Everybody knows she's fire, she's enigmatic, and today's session was completely unforgettable, ma'am.
Thank you.
It is such a huge honor to have spent these couple of minutes, hours, whatever. So I am not in count of how much I spent with you, but it has changed me from within. And I'm sure that everybody listening there will also take one or the two very strong things which in future they will narrate to, that I listened this podcast and ma'am said something like that and it changed me. So thank you so much for being with us on this show, TadPod with Dhruvita Maida.
Thank you.
An initiative by The Architects Diary. So if this stirred your soul, hit like and share, follow, comment and subscribe. Keep us on a high vibe. Signing off from TadPod with Dhruvita Maida, your host, your guide. Until the next soulful ride. Thank you.